and cross your T's, and make sure that if you're doing that, it's as simple, you can reach out to someone on their staff, and as long as I would send an email so you have an email trail, and you have something to reference back to and say, we have permission from your company to use this. Because we had set up a Wikipedia site as part of the social media strategy for ad hoc, and Wikipedia they were really sticklers about even using validating the use of our own logos. Their stringent standards are in place right now, and it's only going to get worse. We've seen a lot of the Stop Online Piracy Act, SOPA, PIPA, whatever, all this stuff. There's all these, it's alphabet soup, but the takeaway is intellectual property and all the things that are surrounding that. Something as harmless as, it's promotional. I would be happy if you were using my logo on your site. Yeah. But there's people out there that, they might have a different point of view, and it might hold water, if they were to take up arms against you.
I've been using, just give you for instance, now, because sensors for about 7 years.
Oh, really?
Although Scott Bankers were looking at me,
is that? Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. In that case, you might want to just circle back with them.
Yeah.
But if it's never come up before and there's that type of a track record and that timeline, I don't think it's going to be an issue. But for a new website, it's a good question. For someone developing a new website or moving forward, and we're going to get into it a lot more in the internet marketing class, if the online piracy type stuff is really becoming a big issue, and for good cause. Not in instances such as you've referenced, but other people are actually stealing intellectual property. They're taking other people's well-developed graphics and using them for their own and branding them for themselves. That's where the line gets blurry, and typically when legislation is passed, it doesn't go to that level and factor in, and the same thing that applies in the public space when the legislators are drafting up policies, it applies to the internet as well. Even more so because they're clueless. Right. They don't know about this stuff, and they don't have anybody to tap into. For example, with the Microsoft case, I remember, not to go too far off track, but when the litigation happened against Microsoft, the judge was Thomas Penfield Jackson, who had never used a computer. Yet he's presiding over the case. The irony of it all. I thought the funniest part of it was, for the first time in human history, they were probably typing up the litigation using the company's word processor, Microsoft Word, to sue them.
Right.
It's crazy. Well, the irony of it all. So good question, thanks. As far as we touched briefly on the creative aspect, and creative, sometimes it gets confused, it's the images that comprise your site. And that really does drive your site. Images are a big part of it. People like to see images. It's a perception thing. When they see the images, it draws them in. And images don't even necessarily need to be standalone images in and of themselves. Typically an image now, the way that we refer to an image, is an image with text overlay superimposed that speaks to your value proposition. You want to get it down to the most granular level that you can with respect to your creative images. And in many cases, that's what distinguishes a great website from an okay website, is the level of quality with respect to their images. Any more questions on this slide, guys? Well, some of the do's, obviously, and we mentioned it previously, it's a theme. You want to test for compatibility against as many browsers as you can. And you could go home tonight and there's actually a website that's free and available. It's called browsershots.org. Browsershots, all one word, .org. I'm sorry? Yeah, WROWSERSHOTS, browsershots.org, where you can actually plug in the homepage of your website and you can select, it's like 700 different browsers across the world. A lot of them are going to be irrelevant. What we do is before we release a website, we go to browsershots.org and we test against all the leading browsers, those that comprise 99% of the market. Internet Explorer, Safari, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, etc. And what will happen is when you plug that in, it'll tell you that everything's been queued up. You come back in 45 minutes, refresh the screen, and it'll show you what your website, or at least what the URL, the homepage, looks like across all those different browsers, all in one fell swoop.
If you do something like alarm system or a system, EDT, boom, comes up all the time.
Right.
How do you get?
Oh yeah, we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the good stuff right there. That's what we love. Yeah, and we're going to get into that in more detail. That's a big time process.
Yeah.
It takes at least 3 to 6 months to make that hatch. But we're going to get into that in a minute. Great question. Well, not in a minute, but in a few minutes.
You need $1 million?
No. No, you don't. You really don't. You could get into the top 3. You know, I don't want to say relatively cheap. I have no idea what their budget is like, their internet marketing budget, but, you know, yeah, you can. That's a great question. We'll cover that in more detail. Okay, Flash. Flash is it's a product from Macromedia. Actually, I think Macromedia was acquired, but it's a programming language. It's a product that people use to show animation in their website. So a lot of times when you go to a website and you'll see a movie playing, what appears to be like a movie, but it's not a video, that's an instance of Flash. That's an example of Flash. Non-Flash means that you don't have those types of embedded movies. Using JavaScript, there's platforms available, products that'll allow you to, and JavaScript is a lightweight programming language. Just to give you a brief definition of it, we're going to get into it in more detail in a few, but there's a DHTML menu builder, a web scroller, that enables you to emulate the functionality of a Flash movie without using Flash. Does that explain your question? Okay, good. And again, Steve Jobs hated Flash, so there's a lot of browsers out there. Apple, Safari, iPod, iPad, that really...
Can you repeat the questions that everybody asked from the front?
Sure, absolutely, good point. This gentleman had asked, what's the difference between Flash and non-Flash? Yeah, thank you. Are you good with that?
Could you finish that statement you were making? Apple always did what?
Oh, I'm sorry. They didn't support Flash. Steve Jobs would not support Flash in his browser. Hated it. Hated it. He just didn't think it was...
I thought it was inefficient like the HTML5.
Early on, people were using Flash to embed viruses in people's computers. And it is kind of a bulky type of a product. It opens up security holes, in my opinion. Core and More Technologies, typically we do not use Flash. Okay, that's our, you know, unless the customer is demanding that we use Flash, we try to steer them away from Flash wherever possible. And that's one of the main reasons why. I don't think that Flash has really ever gotten away from that stigma. And another reason why is because a lot of people have iPhones, and the iPhone operating system doesn't support Flash. The iPad typically doesn't support Flash. Now that's not to say that Flash won't work. You can program your Flash application, and you can integrate that type of thing with your HTML, and you can make your HTML help your Flash browser, your Flash object to jump through hoops, but it's not easy, and it's really not worth it, in my opinion. And that's just my opinion. Does that answer your question? Great. Early on, when we talk about branding, we talk about cascading style sheets. And cascading style sheets, CSS is the acronym, is something that you should use and embrace to control all your fonts and your headers and the spacing and the coloring of all of the text within your website. You should also use it for the padding of your images, and padding is basically, the margins that exist on top of, to the sides and below, images on your website. You want to be consistent across the board with that. And we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail further on. We have a slide dedicated to it. And again, be very careful about, the images that you use. You want to use online, royalty-free. iStockPhoto.com is a place, it's a repository. If you don't want to have, or you don't have the budget, whatever, to hire a graphic designer, go to iStockPhoto. Very useful. Question?
Yeah, I found that even the iStock photos and common photo sites, you have limited photos for security and some of them are so bad that they're ridiculous. Where do you go besides going out and actually shooting them seen would get a high resolution, high quality images? Is there any other places to get them other than stock photos?
That would be a question for my graphic designer. We use iStock Photo. That's pretty. Did everyone hear the question? Good. There's a number of different websites out there that compete in this. Specific to your industry, it would be tough for me to answer that off the top of my head. I think the best answer that I could give you is having a graphic designer or a graphic design resource at your disposal to help you with that is the best way to go. Most of the companies, when I was with Wheelock, we had a department that was dedicated to creating those images. And they would actually take the fire panel, SafePath 4 for example, into a room. And they would take, various, photos with one of those high-end Canon cameras, and then they would superimpose it, etc. I don't think you need to go to that
You
extent.
can do a lot of that now on a Mac.
You could do it with Photoshop.
Pixel camera, you can take a good enough picture for any of those things.
Yep.
Just
Very
a
true.
couple of backdrops, and you can do it all yourself.
You sure can. Same thing with video.
Have it on this site, so.
I'm just saying, you don't have to spend the money like you did 5 years ago.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You really don't. And the same goes for video. These guys at dig.com, they create great videos.
You can edit it on your iPhone.
Yeah. Or on your iPad.
I'm saying they have a whole editing thing just for video.
Right. And they're pretty sophisticated.
Yeah.
Intuitive and very easy to use. All right, so moving on. All right, now, the primary thing that you don't want to do if you're going to be undertaking the development of your website on your own is you do not want to use word processors. Please, don't use Microsoft Word to create HTML pages. Has anyone ever looked under the hood at the code that Microsoft Word creates? I mean, your site will be completely inefficient. The load time, and load time is a significant consideration now with websites and performance. I actually should have mentioned that. Load time is critical in the sense that the Google algorithms and your search engine optimization strategy will be directly impacted if your site has a bad load time. And that's not going to happen if you don't use word processors and your code is created by someone who knows what they're doing. So definitely do not use word processors. Do not use exact sizes to define elements on your site. In other words, when we get into HTML a little bit, you'll see that there's an HTML tag for an image. And a lot of folks in the past would define an image, they would give it a specific size in pixels, and they would give it a size and a height and a width in pixels. And if you resize your browser, the image would not scale. It's going to stay at that static size. And everything is going to become misaligned. If you, when you're building your site, or whoever's building your site, defines all of those types of elements by percentage, everything will resize proportionately, and you will never have that consideration. To go back in and redo that is an absolute nightmare. Okay? And do not, obviously, there's mostly, a lot of this is common sense. You don't want to deviate from your branding strategy. You want to be consistent throughout. You don't want the header in one page to look a little bit different than the header in another page, unless it's absolutely necessary. Any other questions on this slide, folks? I'm sorry. What that means is you don't need to store videos on your own web server. YouTube does it all for you. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail, but what you do is you create your own YouTube channel, and that channel doesn't have to be publicly available. You can have everything private, but you can share embedded video through your website. YouTube has, they have the bandwidth and the backbone of Google behind them. And Google's data centers, they have millions of data centers, and I mean that literally across the world. God bless you. And obviously Google owns YouTube, and they give it away for free. You don't have to pay a dime to join up on YouTube and upload your videos. Not only are you going to have that bandwidth, but it's also going to automatically convert your videos to MP4, the latest technology. And so when you stream through your website, you're not using your own bandwidth. You're using YouTube's bandwidth. So that's one of the reasons why performance isn't as much of a consideration. That is in terms of building your site. It's still a consideration in terms of how your site is indexed, and you want to have a high-performance site. But at the same time, you don't need to really get into the nuts and bolts of, well, what does my download speed look like? What is my bandwidth? That's all handled for you. Good? And his question was on YouTube, I'm sorry, it was, okay.
I'm sorry,